Hey family, thank you for tuning in to Our Roots podcast with 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲. Ifa, where only the strongest roots see the light, brought to you by Botanica Candles and More. And if you haven't had the opportunity, please hit that subscribe button and tap on that like button. What's going on, Phil?
Yeah, man. Happy Sunday. And don't forget to join our membership program. It's a very special place where only the select few can be part. You guys can join and you get access to extra perks. That's extra shows, call-in shows, really a lot more interactive and very intimate with Joseph and us. So definitely join.
Absolutely, a lot of great perks as far as videos and information that comes with that. A more, warmer relationship with all of us here, whether it's me, Phil, Poroye, being able to interact with us and all the benefits that come with that. If you're in, definitely let somebody know about it. If you're interested, it's definitely worth it. Not just because it's ours, but because of what we've heard and the response we've gotten. So today we're doing an episode on Ori.
Okay, so Ori means head.
Ori actually means I see.
Oh, sorry.
And
My bad.
No. It does mean head from a semantical standpoint, because that's what it is referring to. But when we actually break down the compound phrase that led to it being identified with that, it means I see, Ori. And it's making reference to the eye chakra, or that space within our head that actually sees. And the reason they say that it sees is because it's an extension of the pineal gland, which shoots out from the center out, and allows us to see our destiny. And that's really what it's referring to.
So like a third eye kind of
Basically, the eye that, closed and never opened up again, other than metaphysically, which is really all we need, because when Ori is aligned or our head is aligned, everything progresses. And when we look at the spirituality of Ifa, it is called Ifa, right? Ifa refers to the first sounds that happened in the universe. The language of 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗲, that which benefits us to be able to help him on this celestial war between good and evil, right? Or the balance as it's known. But when we're talking about Ori, we're talking about the basis of the whole spirituality of Ifa. Ifa's whole purpose is to basically translate what 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗲 is trying to tell us about how to attend to the personal extension of him within our brain. Because the reason we're able to reincarnate as gods is because basically that celestial extension of God, or Ori, is within our head. So that's where all of the things that differentiate us from the rest of the animal kingdom come from. Creative thought, profound emotion, right, wrong, conscientiousness. All of those things are nothing short of an extension of God. For example, when you look at a lion, right? A lion's thoughts stop when it comes to eating. It's going to eat anything that's in front of it because it has a need to fulfill. It does not have a conscience. But when you look at the human brain, we have this little voice inside of it that till this day we really can't explain. And we can't necessarily say it's ours because, even though it sounds like us, because that's all we really know, there's things that come to mind that may be out of body or don't really reflect us, good or bad. So it's either motivating us to a higher plane, or it's tempting us to fall into the negativity, which we shouldn't, because we should always choose that higher path. Not every thought is reflective of who we are. So that's the constant battle between 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗲, or the light, and 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲, or 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗲, or Ori, living at the front, and the back part of our head, known as 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, which is where 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 sits, which is actually the seat of the central nervous system.
Man, that's crazy. This stuff is ancient when you go back and think of it, but it's so intricate in how it really is in our anatomy.
Yeah, ancient, but definitely not primitive. The Yoruba people, Africa was, far beyond. That's when you look at a movie like Black Panther, you begin to realize there's a lot of truth to that, because the spiritual science and technology that they had, which we're still using to this day, to be able to maintain a relationship with our Supreme Creator, to have an easier time down here and have things flow in our direction. And everybody's going through a personal experience. Everybody's going through something different. And it's reflective of our minds, I saw this great LeBron James commercial the other day about an app that he's, I believe, sponsoring or whatnot. And it says the greats, conquer the body. The greatest control the mind, or come to a point where they're mentally sound. So mental health, really is the foundation of all other healths, because without it, you won't feel motivated to exercise your body or eat correctly. You won't feel motivated to make the right decisions or have a rationale when it comes to important ones or even life-threatening ones. So the Yorubas identified that the head was the supreme being of the body. But ironically, in the Odu Baba Ifa, it says it wasn't always like that. So when the head came down from heaven, it was basically lost. In heaven, it speaks of when Oduduwa and Ogun constructed the body from the toes to the neck. And, there was no head. So we were all kind of just wandering around, right? And the head was kind of rolling and getting kicked around, and it had nowhere to go. And the other Orishas really didn't know what to do with it, per se. And, somehow or another, it rolled into the home of Orunmila, right? And it landed on Orunmila's mat in an erect fashion. And Orunmila performed Dafa for Ori, where the Odu 𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗶𝗶 was revealed, where it was identified that Ori needed to perform sacrifice to occupy its supreme position in the universe, right? And obviously it did. And when he did that, he placed it on top of the shoulders after washing it a certain way, sacrificing to it, dressing it a certain way. And it was placed on top of the head. And at that moment, boom, another metaphor for the dawn of creation. Because with that, at that point, Olodumare was able to take his seat upon the body within us to be able to express himself through our hands here on earth. So pretty epic stuff. When we look at Ori is mentioned through a lot of the 𝗀𝗍s, right? Another one is in 𝗵𝗶𝗍𝗲 𝗀𝗍, number 2. And in that sign, it speaks of the importance of not allowing things to interrupt Ori's development. And it speaks of the palm tree, right? We talked about this in the video about 𝗵𝗶𝗍𝗲 𝗀𝗍, where the palm tree, his parents, trying to protect him, actually covered his leaves and his top with a metal bin, right? And it was basically a metaphor for a hat. Okay. And, it was actually stunting his growth because they were trying to protect him so much they were killing him. The sun couldn't get the leaves. He wasn't getting the rain he needed. Very important themes in this sign. And because of it, he was very frustrated. He visited Orunmila, 𝗵𝗶𝗍𝗲 𝗀𝗍 was revealed, where Ifa said that they could not obstruct Ori in its process in any form or fashion. And when he took it off, the palm tree sprouted up and reached heaven, so it was able to develop and come back in contact with its creator, metaphorically. That's why till this day, 𝗵𝗶𝗍𝗲 𝗀𝗍 has a taboo of hats. And in reality, when we look at Ifa practice, the only time, especially in Isese, really, this is where this concept is, you'll see Ori covered or obstructed is when they do an ibori, right, or a head rogation, which is the ceremonial way of making offerings to the internal head or spirit that is Ori, to be able to alleviate it, realign it, and propitiate it. That's the only time they do this, when it's being offered to their head or if they're offering it to somebody else's head, to not have a change of head or a replacement.
So how do you know if you need to do that or not?
So through Ifa divination, and that's a great question, Phil. When we perform Ifa divination, a lot of people are like, Baba, why are we doing all these things? Or what is the purpose of all the recommendations that come out? If we recall, Ifa is the voice of Olodumare, and Olodumare's extension is Ori. To be able to identify a sign for Ori or the person, you have to touch it to their forehead before divination is cast. And that's to be able to connect the instrument with the subject to be able to reveal the state that it's coming in. So when we read somebody and the Odu of, 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲 is revealed, right? We're basically identifying which celestial combination is influencing that person's destiny at that moment or over a lifetime if it's via initiation. And what occurred is when this happens, Ori begins to identify the things it needs via Ifa and Orunmila, who is the great revealer, like I said in the 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, what it needs to be able to realign or the medicine that it requires. Now, why does that include certain Orishas? Because the phrase Orisha means selected head or defender of the head. So when we look at people like Yemaya, Chango, Chung, their whole role within the universe and existence is to alleviate and protect Ori via receiving the offerings to be able to reconstruct the destiny and realign it, thus for a better life. So anything that comes out in a reading is just to repair your destiny or your Ori. So if it comes out, you need to give a ram to Shango. Shango needs that ram to be able to alleviate Ori, or, you know, an offering to the river, etc.
What's the timeline for that though? Like you have what, 72 hours? Like how does that work?
It should be ASAP, but you know, we never know what's coming out, and people have to prepare economically. I always tell them as soon as they can, you know, definitely within the year of that divination, because that divination is for the year ultimately. So definitely something that they want to get a move on. And people, when they practice Ifa, they're usually not caught off guard. They usually have funds ready for whatever comes out. And my clients kind of know my price scale. So they're usually prepared. But usually that only happens to someone who's not being as organized with their spiritual self as they should be, or someone that's interacting with that professional for the first time, right?
Okay.
So now that, you know, we've touched on the revelation of Ori, Ori expanding itself in 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗶𝗶, there's actually a verse in 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗶𝗶 that speaks of when Ori was alone on the body, right? There was a torso and whatnot, there were limbs maybe, and Ori was lonely, and it went for divination, and it wanted to be able to perform sacrifice to have proper company. It did, and through this sacrifice, the other body parts started getting closer to Ori, right? Like the arms occupied their space. The legs occupied their space. There's even a wild pataki within that one kind of simultaneously where it says our genitalias were actually on our foreheads. And this became very inconvenient for obvious reasons. So then within the same divination, the genitalias were relocated to, you know, where they seem most convenient now. And all of these things. And because of it, all of the limbs and appendages wanted to be near Ori because they knew the benefits that would come from an organ or a body part that was able to think and rationalize and also protect them. Because if the eyes protect the head protects the body, ultimately, through the decisions we make. And, you know, it's really the great seed of creation. I mean, there's another angle here that's also worth mentioning is the sacred breath, as it's known, and is known as 𝗵𝗍. And it sits within the heart, and it facilitates respiration, right, through the circulatory system. It's really interesting because a lot of people will say, you know, you can't live without a head. The 𝗿𝗲𝗵𝗍𝗶 says that. And that's true. But if the heart is not working, you can have a head and still not live. So they say that 𝗵𝗍 is Olodumari's daughter. You know, they work in conjunction where the heart became the second most important organ, or possibly right under Ori, right? Because they need both of those working in sync to be able to have a quality of life, you know, because without the blood flow, everything fails. You know, if our brain isn't working, I mean, there's not much we can do with anything else, even if it's able-bodied. So, you know, 𝗵𝗍𝗵𝗍 was where all of the other appendages and limbs and body parts got close to Ori, you know. So when we talk about Ori, it's very important to make note of that it is the centerpiece of our initiatory process. And the reason being is it is because, you know, it's the most important part of the body, like we just mentioned, where it is seen as the crown of the body, right? The Odu 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗶𝗶, which is the one that most speaks about Ori, says that, you know, a hat can never compete with a crown. You know, so whether it's speaking about the head or what goes on the head, ultimately we've identified that that is the most convenient place, being that it's placed there above all to focus our initiatory rites, right? So that's where the phrase crowning Orisha comes from, because, you know, it's really the focal point of the process. Apart from that, especially in the region of Oyo within Nigeria, they have the concept that one king rules the head. So when we look at, you know, Lukumi practice, right, being that we're very Oyo-centric, and in Oyo, for the longest time, up until modernly possibly, they were all Shango this, Shango that. When you crown Shango, you didn't crown anybody else. Nobody goes above 𝗀𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗍, right, or your highness. But what they ended up adapting in Cuba was that, you know, we'll identify which Orisha best fits the person, being that we were ripped from our homeland and don't know our ancestry, and we'll respect it and leave them there alone. When we look at Isese practice, they look at the process not as regally, so therefore you crown everybody. You know, whichever Orisha you want to crown, you crown. So for example, let's say I'm a son of Oshun, but I want to receive, I don't know, Iemoja. I don't get crowned Yemaya. I receive it in ceremonial process, as opposed to someone who's crowned Oshun first in Nigeria and they want to receive Yemaya, they crown Yemaya too. They don't.
But why? Sorry. Why?
Yeah.
But why would you want to receive Yemaya if you're crowned another Orisha?
So, I mean, are you talking about like 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗄 wise or our wise? Like in the case of us just receiving it, the reason I would just receive it is like, let's say something comes out in a reading and I have to make offerings to Yemaya on a consistent basis. I might just want to invest and have my own Yemaya rather than paying said Orisha to do it.
But I thought the Orisha chooses you though, right?
Yeah, from a guardian Orisha standpoint. So more than likely referring to Isese. It's for benefits. You know, they look at, you know, the things that are applied and whatnot as beneficial in its totality throughout the body. So they really don't have those concepts. Another reason you might want to assimilate another Orisha is because in reality, we're not children of the Orishas per se. We are children of the sign, or Odu. So, for example, in my sign of 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗲, you know, there's various Orishas that are affiliated with that sign that are best for me to reincarnate as or repeat those processes as. So that's what would motivate me. In our practice, we don't do that. And another reason why is we're talking about cost. The Afro-Cuban Lukumi process is very costly when it comes to crowning. So like, we're just going to do this one time, put all of our effort into this, and this is the Orisha you're going to focus on.
Got it. Okay. I get it.
So it speaks of that. Now, there's another interesting point here because, you know, when we talk about Ori, we talk about, you know, the Ori icon, right? You have Ori Nu, which is the internal head, and Ori Ode, which is the one that lives outside of you, or kind of acts as a focal point or almost a satellite within within nature as your counterpart. And you're gonna see it. It's like this this conical. Sometimes I have seen it as a cylinder as well. Basically receptacle where Ori goes inside. Now, some people would say, based on the Odu 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗲, that no one receives Ori. Everyone is born with Ori. So why are we, you know, consecrating this icon? Are you trying to take my money?
Oh, okay.
By no means. So what happens is the Ori icon isn't you receiving Ori. It never replaces your head. It is a symbol that goes through a process showing the universe that you have fulfilled your debts with Ori strictly based on your destiny, right? So to be able to receive Ori, at least the way it was done in my lineage, there's a couple things that happen. We have to ask the Ifa oracle, or the revealer of Ori, Orunmila, what is it that Ori wants? Are there any Orishas that want anything based on your specific debts with Ori? There's ceremonial processes that occur. There's sacrifices that occur that go into the consecration of that icon or the fulfillment of your debt. And it lives there so that whatever energies at hand or the universe at hand is able to recognize you're somebody that fulfilled your debt on earth. When does this debt happen? This debt happens during the construction of Ori, and when we look at this concept, it can be found in the Odu of Obeyono, or Obe Ori Ogunda, where Obe's head translated to Ogunda, basically. And, you know, this kind of goes back to our creation myth somewhat, where, you know, in the beginning, what happens is via clay and iron for the Orisha Odudua, who manifests more the muscular system, versus Ogun, who manifests more the skeletal system, they construct the body from the toes to the neck, right? And at that point, that body is thrust into the house of a gentleman known as 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲 or Ayala, depending on your tradition. Why are we thrust in there blindly? The reason being is because 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲 all day does one thing. He molds heads out of clay, right? And the reason you go in blind is because you're going to select your destiny of the millions that are there fairly, because if we had a choice, everybody would live the longest, look the best, be the richest. So when you select your head blindly, it is basically associated with an Odu, or a sign or a destiny, and you place it on your head like Ayobe stated, and at that point, the Odu Obedi takes over, where you actually kneel in front of your creator, all the Orishas, and all the ancestors ever. Pretty epic. And at that moment, Olodumare asks you, what do you want to do with your time on earth now that you've made it to the front of the line? And you're like, I want to be a Bawalao. He's like, okay. He says yes to anything, as long as it's moral. And he says, well, based on your destiny to be able to, you know, go down, what do you offer as tribute? And you're like, yeah, I'll give a cow, or an elephant or, something, whatever. And then on top of that, he adds debts to you saying, well, you might have to add this, this, and this as well based on your destiny to be able to achieve that, or the experiences, positive or negative, you have to go through to deserve that. At that point, you can't say no. And who's there is a gentleman known as 𝘃𝗶𝗿𝗄, or Orunmila, which means witness to destiny, right? And the reason Orunmila is the witness to destiny is because he's the one who writes it down via one of the 256 signs of Ifa, and that becomes crucial after we're born. But at that point, they identify which Orisha or Orishas are most compatible with you, which ancestors or spiritual guides are most compatible with you, to help you fulfill the mission that you're coming down here for. Everybody here is coming down for a reason, various levels of impact, but somehow we're meant to help each other. So at that moment, everything's written down via the sign, and they say bye-bye. And at that moment, you are thrust into your mother's womb, or you're born, and you don't remember anything because the water, or the amniotic fluid within your mother's stomach is known as 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, which means the water of forgetfulness, which basically erases your memory. This is also in the 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗍, where Shango would erase people's memory when they were learning Ifa too quickly, or outside of context.
How are we supposed to learn our lessons though if we don't remember?
Absolutely. So at that point, when you're born and you just got spanked, you just got kicked out of paradise. That's why you're crying, like, oh man, I have to go through this again. At 7 days for girls or 9 days for boys, you're taken to receive the hand of Ifa, where Orunmila, via divination done by his representative on earth, the 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗏, reveals the sign that you selected in heaven. So through that sign and through the compendium of past life experiences that all of the people before us, going all the way back to creation, left us, we're able to figure out what it is we asked for and what it is we're supposed to do. And it all radicates around Ori, because all of it is emanating from your head. Everything we go through on life or in life is a result of what we're thinking or what's manifesting from our own brain. And, science has proven this. It is the root. A thought is the root of all action. A thought or a lack thereof, even scarier. But once you have this, at that point, you're also reminded of the debts that you promised to fulfill upon earth before leaving heaven, right? And the reason you do that is because in the hand of Ifa, when you're going for divination, right, and you're in front of the tray at that, big moment, you put your forehead to the tray and you kiss the tray. And the reason being is because by your forehead touching the tray and your head become one. And what I'm doing with the 𝗃𝗃, which are symbolic of the spiritual neurons that are basically within your head or the pineal gland, I'm moving them the same way they move inside of your brain in a very, coordinated, choreographed fashion to reveal an 𝗃𝗲𝗿. And that 𝗃𝗃𝗿 is who you are. It's your soul. So at that moment in the hand of Ifa, or Isese Santeria, 𝗃𝗲𝗿𝗄, 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲, whatever you want to call it, we are bringing your true soul down from heaven to your brain. You have just been unplugged from the matrix.
Ooh.
So that's why that movie comes up so much with everything we do. But at that moment, once you come down, if you notice with Neo, what did they do? When they flushed him out, they had to nurse him back to health and give him things and prepare him.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the hand of Ifa. When we bring out your sign or unplug you, those recommendations are the medicine that you need for nature begin to harmonize with you, because you have just basically infringed on her property. It's like, oh man, another human being. What now? So you have to make offerings to harmonize with nature and all the energies that are here so that things can start going your way. That's why people ideally should receive it young, or I've had situations where people older at different chapters of life have received Hand of Ifa, and they received blessings they were supposed to receive 30 years ago. It's like you unplug the floodgates and it just all comes in pouring in at once. So that's the importance of the revelation of Ori, which is done by Orunmila via the sign of Ifa, right? So that's super key. And when we talk about Ori, we're talking about something that's very delicate. The head is a very delicate thing. When we look at the sutures and the fontanelles on top of the head, the cerebral bones and the way they fit into each other, or even the soft spot on a baby's head that we have to be so careful with, but it's still in contact with heaven because it hasn't closed yet. So Ori itself, the brain, still has a direct, connection, Con Edison, to heaven. you know. So that's why children are so innocent and so divine and have these like moments of like revelation. Or you'll notice people will be like, man, I used to see dead people when I was a child, but I don't see them now. Or I used to get inspiration and see things and hear things when I was a kid. I don't see it now. Will it ever come back? Yes, but if we don't stimulate it, it's harder. It's like when you don't go to the gym for a while. You know, those first 3 months, you know what they are. So it's the same thing with that. But it also makes reference to why it's so important to preserve. It also makes reference to why in the 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗲 it says that children don't need any priesthood ceremonies until the age of 7 or after. And the reason being is because in that Odu was where Oya wanted her son or daughter to initiate into Orisha, or her son is a 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗲. And I think he was very young, like, 6, 5, something like that. And Orunmila said, well, we have to wait till 7 years, before Ori is prepared. And ironically, that's also the same moment when the suture closes on top of the head, thus hardening the skull to protect what's inside. And she didn't want to wait, and her husband, 𝗃𝗺𝗃𝗃, who was Orunmila's brother, explained that, they should listen, and they didn't. And, in that version of the story, they did 𝗃𝗏𝗿𝗲, and from some freak random experience, he passed away.
Whoa.
So you see a lot of cases where they're doing Ifa and Orisha, these really young children. And, 𝗃𝗏𝗿𝗲, amongst other Odus, says that the child doesn't need any Orisha at that point, other than Orunmila, to reveal who they are, to help raise them, so that the real guardian Orishas, which are the parents, are able to handle that up until 7 years old. After that, based on what we've been able to instill in them, the Orishas kind of take over in conjunction with us. So very important processes and nuances when it comes to the head. When we talk about Ori, we can also look at the Odu 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗶 or 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗶𝗲. And that sign was where 𝗃𝗺𝗃 came down from heaven. And he saw humans, but he was a little scared because he noticed that their brains were exposed, right? Or their Ori. And he was like, this really doesn't make sense, because anything could hit that thing and they're dead, So he was like, I need to get organized and see how I can help these people, because, nobody's going to last. So he went to visit Orunmila, and the Odu of 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗶 was revealed, or 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗲. And Ifa told him to perform sacrifice with an 𝗵𝗶, which is a bowl of gourd fruit, right? And he basically took the bowl and looked at it, and he said, well, this kind of looks like it would fit on top of the bottom half of the face. And he put it on top of the head, and at that point, the skin grew over it, and it actually created the cranium.
Oh.
So in that sign, basically, Ori was able to protect itself via the bones, right? And all the other things that go into it. But, it speaks of the supreme importance, where 𝗃𝗺𝗃 saw Ori exposed, and he said, this isn't convenient. Until this day, obviously, certain head traumas and things can be devastating to us as, organisms. So, it speaks to that in 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗶. I think another big point to touch on here is the ibori, or the offering to Ori. This can be found in a couple different Odus. The principal ones are in the Odu 𝗿𝗶𝗍𝗄, which we're going to say a lot here, and 𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏, from the Afro-Cuban standpoint, right, as well as 𝗿𝗏𝗍𝗏. And what happened was in 𝗿𝗏𝗍𝗄, it was identified that, Ori needed to be offered to, and 𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏 as well, because being that it was a deity unto itself, and it was so grandiose, it was actually applying pressure to the rest of the body. I mean, it was literally the throne of destiny. So the other parts of the body spiritually couldn't handle the weight. So they visited Orunmila, and divination was performed with either one of these Odus. That kind of applies to both, but more strongly to 𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏. And, it came out that they needed to also make offerings not only to the head, but to the other parts of the body, specifically the joints. And when they did that, it fortified them in a way where the weight was bearable, and tolerable. And because of it, till this day, the body is able to, interact in conjunction with each other without being detrimental to each other. That's why, ideally, on an annual basis, you at least get one of these done, especially if you're these Odus, right? But they say the extension of Ori, front of the head, back of the head. And this is also why a lot of the professionals that are watching this, we say Agori, Agoipako, all of these different things, because there's spiritualities that live in each of them, and they're all extensions of Ori. So some of the points are going to be the front of the head, back of the head, front of the throat, the inner elbow, on the inside, the belly button, which is really prominent within the 𝘃𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗶, because, opposed to the joints, such as what's left of the knees and the feet and the wrists, or the hands, palms, in Isese, the head rogation looks completely different. You'll see a focus on Ori. You'll see a focus on Ori Ionu, or Ionu as it's known, which is the interior one, which represents the stomach that was born in Obeyono. And then Imponring, or Impori, which was born in the Odu of Baba Ifa, which is the left big toe. They say that each of these things is where destiny sits. The belly button has to do with our umbilical cord back to our mother, who was the one who gave us destiny, ultimately, or Odu. Then you have the one that sits in the head, which is Ori, basically Olodumari's extension. And then you also have the one in the left big toe, which actually represents Eshu, right? To a certain degree, and how Ori can kind of sway left and right if we don't align it, In Isese, I've seen that it is not common to offer animals directly to the head. Like, for example, if I'm going to do a head rogation, as an Afro-Cuban 𝗏𝗏𝗏 in an Afro-Cuban context, I'm going to feed them directly to the head. Always being careful with the pigeon as well as the quail, because ideally those necks, when they're exposed, should not touch the head because it can cause lunacy. But I would feed the blood directly there and touch the other parts of the body with no problem and continue the process. From another standpoint, in Isese, they don't feed animals directly to the head, but I have seen that they will do this with the guinea hen, being that it has a crown, which is the big knot that it has on its head. And they'll only feed aspects of Ori, such as the head, the belly button, and the big toe. You usually see a process with a plate, obis offered. Another big point when it comes to Ori, especially in an Isese standpoint, is the Odu of Iwa is usually a firm yes, because it's basically Ori saying you have good character, continue working on it, but it's more than satisfactory. So there's no reason to go over it, at least the way I was taught, 𝗶𝗏𝗏𝗏. And then another concept that they have is during the Ibori, to not, bow your head for at least 30 minutes to an hour afterwards, because you want to keep Ori in that supreme aligned position, whether it be looking forward or whether it be, directly, to a higher power. And that can be really difficult because some of these things will make you feel very sleepy. You kind of want to knock out.
Okay.
In the Afro-Cuban tradition, we actually sleep with the head rogation on. We allow it to keep realigning throughout that whole night. There's plates involved. Ingredients are marked on the body. The most common ones that you'll see in a head rogation, definitely coconut is used on both sides pretty frequently, actually. It was identified by both, being that coconuts actually represent the right and left hemisphere of the brain. And then you have the very cooling property between the fat and the color and moisture of the coconut. For Ori, it's very ideal. Water, fresh water, omidudu, shea butter, or Ori as it's known. And the shea butter is really to relax things. A lot of these things have to do with Obatala, being that he was the one that constructed the head. Efung, right? At least in our tradition, because Efung has a different context than Isese. Gin, believe it or not, or any type of alcohol is used to wake Ori up. So it's a great appeasement for positive things to arrive. 𝗶𝗏𝗏𝗏, or the pink nut, kola nut as it's known, orobo, or the bitter kola, which is associated to Shango, but it has a lot of properties with the interior Ori as far as waking it up and aligning it. Ierosung as well, the sacred powder of the Babalawos is used as well as a reiteration of the Odu that lives within it. All of these different things, every ingredient that you offer to Ori has to have a certain reasoning behind it. It's not that we just wake up and, put something on our head, which some people do, but, not everything within Ifa is generic. So, for example, red palm oil might be good for your Ori, but it might not be great for mine. Another thing to take into account is that your Orisha actually doesn't have an influence over what's offered to your head. What actually has the most influence is your Odu, right? So, for example, when you look at a child of Obatala, right? Red palm oil, salt, and palm wine are taboo for Obatala, deadly, right? But just because you are a child of 𝗶𝗸𝗍 and you're crowned 𝗶𝗸𝗍 doesn't mean you can't offer those things to your head. It really comes down to what your Ori wants or your destiny wants, you know? So nothing negative is going to come from that as long as, you know, it's not taboo in your Odu. For example, I'm a son of Oshun, and for the longest time in the Afro-Cuban practice, you know, the Odu Babao Trupomeji, just like Ireten Telu, states that any child of Oshun, crowned or not, should never offer a snail to their head or on their behalf. I've been in processes where it's gone to my head. I've never had an issue. Life is going okay by the grace of God. And I took that step based on my own interpretation and study, and I've stood by it, and it's served me well. I think that's more applicable to the people who have that Odu and are initiated into that Orisha, right? But I will say that, you know, based on my Odu of Irete Otura, there's actually a verse that's dedicated to the snail and all the benefits it provides. So, you know, that's why we always have to base ourselves more on the Odu than the Orisha per se. The only time I've seen where the Orisha somewhat overpowers the Odu is with the children of Oya, you know, based on the ram. You know, it's to the point, like some people would say with 𝗶𝗸𝗍 as well, as far as the palm wine, but that's more from ingesting. But I have seen with Oya that, you know, the children of Oya shouldn't even use the utensils or pots where a ram was processed and cooked. So you have to leave that up to lineage, however you want to interpret it, as extreme as you want to be.
I mean, people do that though.
Some people do. I know for a fact the children of Oya are pretty terrified of the ram, all in all. Like, they want nothing to do with it.
But that's not taboo though, to use those same equipment for like food.
Yeah, so when someone's actually preparing ceremonial food, that's actually going to be offered to the Orisha at that point, yes. So, for example, let's say an Orisha process is happening, right? Shango and Yemaya are going to eat their ram. And let's say you finish with that pot, right? Those pots specifically cannot be used to cook any of Oya's food, because the essence or the energy, they even say, is in the metal, right? Depends how extreme you want to be, but it was taken so seriously to the point that back in the day, when someone was an alache, or the person that cooks the ceremonial food, they would bring literally different pots for different Orishas. Like Oya would have her own pot, and kind of everybody else would share a pot, because none of them really contradicted each other that way. Unless, you know, like with the red palm oil, being that it stains so much, it's very difficult to cook anything in a pot that's used red palm oil, even if it's thoroughly cleaned, without palm oil getting on the food. So 𝗶𝗸𝗍 would have his own pot to cook in. Oya would have her own pot. And then the other Orishas really didn't have any taboos to contradict each other per se, to the point where, you know, we couldn't utilize any of those utensils. So it becomes that minute, but that's why people charge money and are compensated for their knowledge. And you really see whether people did things right or not, going all the way to the ita, right? Or the divination, or the results of the ceremony in general. Like, how did things go during and after? You know, even before. You know, the Orisha see so far ahead. If you're going to do something wrong and you're mentally like, I'm going to do that regardless of what, they might start punishing things now or making things go haphazard right now. They're like, why wait? 𝘃𝗍 punishes you today for what you did, you know, a year ago, or, you know, punishes you tomorrow for what you're doing in a year. So,
oh, that could even happen too.
Absolutely, yeah. 𝘃𝗍 and all these deities, especially 𝘃𝗍, has a foresight that only Orunmila has, you know, via Ifa.
So if you get that message, like, what do you do to prepare? Like, how do you even react to that?
If things are done, you just brace yourself. If they haven't been done, that's why divinations and things like that happen before initiation processes. Believe me, they're gonna let you know. And you hear about it time and time again. I think, even though Ori is a beautiful concept and it deifies us to a certain degree, those who have assimilated these medicines and these processes, just because we're deified doesn't mean we're God. You know, our divinity comes through our mind, it comes through our logic, it comes through our process, and also our good character. Because without 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, or good character, or suru, which is patience, we will never accomplish or attain an aligned Ori. You know, whether it's distractions, vices, delving into taboo. A lot of people say, well, you know, what if I delve into the taboos of my sign? All you're doing is frustrating Ori and disaligning Ori in a way that could take a very long time to be able to repair. Orula is the repairer of destiny. He's the repairer of the head spiritually. whenever we perform a divination or a ceremony, we're basically doing either a spiritual MRI or spiritual brain surgery. That's why we'll do these completely unrelated processes, and then, wow, all of a sudden you became wealthy, or wow, all of a sudden you find a great partner, or your marriage is saved, or, how do these things become effective based on doing things without actually having to open or operate on somebody or literally sign them up for eHarmony? It's because there's spiritual blockages that need to be opened up from processes such as these. All we're doing is manipulating energy, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, when we talk about Ori, one of the biggest signs besides Baba Ifa is Baba Orunmila. And, it speaks of when Orunmila was consulting the Orishas and all the people and asking human beings, or human beings were asking him, who's going to die with me? Who's going to leave this earth with me? And they said, Orunmila is going to leave with us. And he said, no, I'm not dying. And they said, my guardian Orisha is going to die with me. And the guardian Orisha was like, I died once. I don't want to go through it again. And they basically said, no, my son, my daughter, the dog, anybody. And all of them said, no, you're going to die alone based on us. And 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗲 responded, the only thing that dies with you is Ori. Because it is the life force. For you to be able to exit, it has to die out as well. But once that energy is released, then it gets recycled. I mean, they've actually had people hooked up, and they've been able to do studies and record, like, your brain stays alive 7 minutes after death.
Yeah.
And, it's really ironic, the number 7, once again, because they say the earliest amount of time that it takes for Ori to awaken is 7 days. So the number 7 is affiliated with the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁, and there's a huge verse like the one I spoke about when, the genitalia repositions itself and all the limbs and things went to be with Ori. It is interesting that there still is brain activity 7 moments or 7 minutes after death. So, and they say it looks like a burst of light. It's like an explosion or a big bang, going all the way back to the dawn of creation, or when Ori was consecrated and it had a cataclysmic effect and noise, it says. So it lets you know there is something after we're gone. There has to be. And we've been able to scientifically prove that. But the most important thing is to know that to be able to get to that point in a healthy fashion, in a fluid fashion, to be able to facilitate our transition, we need to do as much work while we're here to make that a smooth process, Ori is literally the basis of our spirituality. Things like hats and things like that, most people would say white is a great way to appease Ori. I think it's a good moment to kind of go over daily routines with Ori, right?
Before you get started with that, though, you didn't mention, so this kind of reminds me of the word, like, soul.
Sure. It's where your soul sits.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. I mean, the only thing that gives us a soul is this higher thought that we're capable of. I mean, if you don't have the ability to make ethical decisions and overcome temptation and distraction, what soul do you have? Because, the absence of a soul is identified by soulless action. And what's soulless? Hurting people, disregarding people. All of these things shouldn't be possible or able to be avoided if you have a consciousness, which we all do. We all have free will, which is kind of like the monkey wrench of the universe, because 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗲 and Ifa and all these guys know exactly what's best for us. And even with all the advice they give, we still have free will to do the opposite and completely fail. It's kind of like with our kids, I could give them the best advice based on my experiences, and they'll go completely left, and I have to accept that life is the best teacher. It's really wild, because I used to have these moments when I procreated for the first time and had a baby, and I'd be holding my child in my hands, and I'd look and be like, wow, they're in theta. They don't even know what's going on right now, and it's the most humbling moment, because you are God to them. You're looking over them, you're watching over them, and they have no idea. And sometimes I wonder, I have this theory, are the Orishas looking over us the same way and we just can't see them? Is God looking over us the same way? Are the aliens looking over us the same way, kind of watching everything, and we don't even have the mental capabilities to comprehend what's really going on around us? Are we so distracted? So a little theory of mine, based on that, interaction with my kid. But it is a really comforting experience when you can go through an Ifa process or a divination, and it'll have this chilling revelation where you're like, wow, somebody's watching over me. Somebody sees what's going on. So it's comforting. It's a little ominous, but at the same time, it's necessary because we're not meant to go through life alone or blind. You know.
I like that.
So
It reminds me of Avatar too, because have you seen Avatar or no?
no, I gotta watch it, man.
So
I've heard so many amazing things.
there was this one of the themes is or terms that they say is I see you, but not as like with my eyes.
Yeah,
It's
you
like,
see with
I
your heart.
see you, but like they point to their third eye.
Oh yeah,
I mean, they don't have a third eye physical, but
Ah.
they point to that spot on their head
Yeah, that's Ifa.
and they say, "I see you."
Yeah, that's completely Ifa. You know, and it's crazy because Odu, it says within Odu that Odu had eyes that were able to peer into the heart, you know, and see beyond the masks that we wear, right? Stanley Ipkiss, right? The mask. But that's definitely an Ifa concept for sure. And it's reiterated throughout all coherent spiritualities. It's like if you look at Hinduism, chakras, things like that, Buddhism, pressure points, all these different things. You know, it's been identified that there's parts of the body that have to do with different aspects of our life. Principally Ori to begin with. You know, who kind of umbrellas over all the other ones. You know, and all we're doing is fighting a battle. I mean, in the 𝗿𝗲𝗶𝗶𝗲, it speaks of a scenario where Ori wasn't functioning correctly. And they wanted to see why. And they did divination. And this Odu was revealed where Ifa said that it needed to receive sacrifice to Ori via the hands of 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 because everybody else was doing the head rogation, but Orunmila wasn't really being contracted for that purpose. And when the divination was done, he identified that the reason things weren't being received well by Ori was because a deity of misfortune known as 𝗍𝗍𝗍 was robbing the sacrifice to the head so that Ori couldn't progress or function, thus the person suffering. In 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍, it was identified that they took an 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁 or the guinea pepper pod. In the story, it was 20 guinea peppers, but some people just put the whole pod. And that ingredient actually deflected misfortune, and because of it, Ori was able to become alert and progress. You know, so it speaks of the importance of, you know, knowing what we're doing, why we're doing it, and understanding the really big effects that even simple offerings like that could have, you know. So that's in the 𝗿𝗲𝗶𝗶𝗲. But like I said, Ori is technically the whole religion. It's the whole reason why we study Ifa, learn Ifa, try to learn about ourselves, because that's all we're really trying to do is find ourselves within this organ. You know, and it can take a lifetime, but it's never a wasted journey, you know, because it's something so complex. You know, it takes a lifetime of study or experience to be able to decipher it. And then you got things like AI, Phil. You know, look at what just came out with, I think they came out with an iRobot. Did you see that?
Oh my goodness! Yeah, this was
terrifying.
At the time of this recording, it was the day. It was yesterday. The time.
Yeah, right. I got like 3 messages about it. Like it's over with Baba, and
it literally is a scene of iRobot where they're walking down the street, and it's a bunch of Elon Musk's personal robots. I'm like, oh man, this is.
Yeah.
And they talk to you like a human.
Yeah, it's terrifying because all we're doing is desensitizing ourselves, coddling ourselves. The less we stimulate the head, the less it's gonna be able to be an asset to us, you know. And I think AI has its perks. I mean, when you could delegate work in a way where it makes you more productive, sure, but I don't think we can get to the point where we can completely replace ourselves because, you know, nothing for nothing. I mean, what's stopping somebody from pushing a button and you know it just completely going left on us?
So like, I know it's a little off topic, but how I see AI when it comes to stuff like that, I don't see humanoid things doing task. I just see whatever we have just doing the task. So like a dishwasher, I don't have a robot washing my dish. The dishwasher is washing the dishes.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or like a Roomba. I don't have a humanoid robot pushing a vacuum cleaner. We have the Roomba doing the work. So I don't see the future of AI as more humanistic. I see it as more as integrated technology, which we already have. Yeah. So like the future of podcasting, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's already working. Like how the podcast experience now is way easier now versus how it was just even 2-3 years ago.
Oh gosh, yeah, like some of your associates, like the way you're able to streamline these productions with the iPhones and things like that. You know, look how it was 20, 30 years ago where you had to fill a whole room of equipment to be able to get something subpar quality compared to, you know, what we're doing right now.
Yeah, like we have back here in the corner.
Yeah, sure. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, and it's just incredible, the progress. But it's like you said, I think it's going to be more subtle. I think it's going to be more...
yeah, like we won't have a human or a robot driving a car. You just have the car just driving
to drive itself. So, you know, it's a way... I don't know. I'm not a conspiracist, but... You know, we are, I think, delegating a little too much sometimes. You know, we can't allow ourselves to become, you know, we can't relinquish our thoughts. You know, we can't relinquish that free will.
Yeah, I've seen, and because, you know, my day job, I'm a marketer, right?
Yes,
so
sir.
I utilize, you know, AI to help me with social media posts. So like, I can read a post a mile away and tell that it's been done by AI, and I feel that people have used it now as a crutch.
Sure.
So it's definitely crippled the creativity for people, and now they're using it as a crutch. And then if something happens to it where it goes down or anything like that, or it changes, people
don't know what to do.
They're going to be lost, man.
Absolutely, they don't know what to do. It's like even with my daughter, I'm teaching her cursive. Not that there's nothing wrong with not knowing cursive, but I mean it's something that is going to make you more competitive. It's something that's going to separate you or distinguish you, and that's really, as human beings, we all have the same things. But what distinguishes you? And one of those is going to be thought, you know, your character, the aspect of yourself that you impart upon the things you create. And that creative aspect of ourself is the divine part that keeps us in contact with a higher power. So if we relinquish that, are we living or are we just breathing? You know, so it's really scary, the crutch aspect of that. But, you know, just a couple final notes on Ori. You know, the big Odus that speak about Ori are, you know, Odus like 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍, 𝘊𝗀𝗍𝗔, 𝘊𝗶𝗸𝗍. It represents the three spiritual hemispheres of the cranium, or brain, or however you want to look at it. Those three bones that kind of come together to form it. Those are also Odus that speak heavily of when the 𝗃𝗲𝗿𝗁, or the catfish, was offered to the head, which is seen as the strongest offering to Ori, period. In Nigeria, they give it live. We have a different process over here that we use the snapper for. You know, and just basically reiterations of processes where Ori became divine and was basically made sacred. So,
okay. Well, guess what? Guess what time it is?
It's that time.
That's right. It is that time to show some love to the people that show love to the channel. Guys, directly under this video, there is a join button. And if you click that button, it'll take you to a nice video of Joseph saying what the perks are for joining our membership. You know, we have 3 separate tiers, each tier offering its own different perks, whether that's extra shows, early releases to shows, and extra content or discounts on merch. So make sure you get in on that right away. Absolutely. So let's show some love to some people here. We got the super fans. We got Andrew Casanova.
Thank you.
We got Diego Ray.
Super fan.
Gilly84.
Very nice.
Lovely K celebrating 18 months.
OG.
Boom. And we got the VIPs. We got Manny Sofik.
Vips.
We got Yoga Rudy.
Oh, yeah.
We got Nori J. And rounding it out with Icon.
I don't know, that 𝘃𝗶𝗿𝗏. That's a great name, too.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big fan of the New Orleans rap and stuff like that. But anywho, botanicacandlesandmore.com is up and running for all services and product needs. We do ship. If you can't catch us on YouTube, be sure to listen to the podcast on all or any of the major platforms.
People sleep on that though. Like you're like top,
a lot of people listen to it.
Top 3% in the world.
Yeah, that's wild, man. Yeah, just to have that kind of following. But I am noticing that it's going up even more. Because people are busy, you know, and as much as they love to look at our faces, whenever they get to see yours, Phil,
be a VIP.
Yeah, absolutely. Get in the VIP, and you'll see Phil every time we do a live. How about that?
Okay, fine.
Big selling point. Guys, big thank you from all of us here at Our Roots Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, and until next time, see the light.